The air in Memphis is thick on August 16th, heavy with heat, heavy with humidity, heavy with the end of things. Up on a hill, behind a stone wall and a set of gates wrought in the shape of musical notes, a white-columned house stands silent. This is Graceland. It is a palace, a fortress, a southern home. And on this afternoon, it is a tomb. Inside, the air conditioning hums a low, indifferent drone. It fights a losing battle against the Tennessee summer. It cannot fight the silence. The house is quiet, too quiet. The usual sounds are missing. The crack of billiard balls, the low murmur of the television, all was on. The laughter, the commands, the music. The king is sleeping, or so they think. So they hope. Ginger Alden, his last girlfriend, stirs from sleep. The afternoon light is weak. The bedroom is a cavern of red velvet and black leather, heavy with the scent of cologne and stillness. She calls his name. No answer. She knocks on the door of his dressing room, his bathroom, his private inner sanctum. The silence that answers is solid. A wall. She pushes the door and finds him. The king of rock and roll, the boy from Tupelo who became a god, the man who could have anything, buy anything, do anything, is crumpled on the floor, face down on the thick shag carpet, a scene of domestic tragedy, mundane, awful. The panic is a scream that catches in the throat. It echoes off the gold-plated fixtures. It is absorbed by the thick towels. Chaos erupts, frantic calls, shouts, the desperate, clumsy attempts at resuscitation, but it is too late. It has been too late for hours. The palace has lost its monarch. An ambulance wails its way up the long, winding driveway. Its siren is a desecration of the manicured peace. They carry him out, not with ceremony, not with pomp, but on a stretcher, a body shrouded in a sheet, a final hurried exit from the stage he had built for himself. The news breaks. A crack of lightning across the world. Elvis Presley is dead. At 42 years old, he died in the heart of his kingdom, the one place on earth that was supposed to be his sanctuary, his escape. But how did this happen? How does a man build a fortress to keep the world out, only to find the greatest danger was already inside? This is the story of a house named Graceland, and it is the story of the man who filled it with his dreams, his fears, and his secrets, until the house was the only thing left. To understand how a king died alone on a bathroom floor, we must go back before the gates, before the music, before the fame, back to the land itself. Long before a single note of rock and roll was ever played, the land was just a hill, part of a 500-acre farm that stretched across the rolling Tennessee countryside south of a burgeoning Memphis. It was land that belonged to the S.C. Toth family. Stephen Toth was a Memphis business magnate, printing, publishing. He was old money, established, respected. His commercial printing company was a cornerstone of the city. The farm was his family's rural escape. The name did not come from him. It came from his daughter. Her name was Grace, and in her honor, the sprawling property was named Graceland. It was a gentle name, a pastoral name. In 1939, Grace Toth's niece, Ruth Moore, and her husband, Dr. Thomas Moore, inherited a piece of that land. On the crest of the hill, overlooking what was then a quiet country road called Highway 51, they decided to build a home. They hired an architectural firm, Furbringer and Ehrman, Memphis Architects for Memphis Society. They designed a 2-story, 5-bay classical revival house. It was elegant, stately, a vision of Southern respectability, white columns framing a central entrance, a pediment above the door, tuffo limestone, giving it a creamy, dignified facade. It had 10,000 square feet, a small mansion by today's standards, a palace for its time. The Moores lived there with their daughter, Ruth Marie. She was a musician, a harpist with the Memphis Symphony Orchestra. Music was in the house from the very beginning, classical music, refined, orderly. The estate was a working cattle farm. Black Angus cows grazed on the green pastures. It was a picture of Southern tranquility, a place of quiet wealth and established tradition. It was everything the boy from Tupelo was not. His story begins not on a manicured lawn, but in a dirt yard. January 8, 1935, East Tupelo, Mississippi. Gladys Presley gives birth to twins in a two-room shotgun shack built by her husband, Vernon. The first boy, Jesse Guerin, is stillborn. 35 minutes later, Elvis Aaron Presley enters the world. He arrives alone. He will carry the shadow of that missing brother for the rest of his life. A phantom twin, a constant, unspoken sense of incompleteness. His childhood is one of grinding poverty. The Presleys are poor, dirt poor, moving from place to place, always one step ahead of debt, one step behind stability. Vernon works odd jobs, truck driver, painter. In 1938, he is sentenced to 3 years in the notorious Parchman Farm Prison for forging a $4 check. Gladys and a 3-year-old Elvis are forced to move in with relatives. The experience is formative. A deep fear of poverty takes root in the young boy, a fierce, protective love for his mother, a desperate need for security. He is a shy boy, quiet, a mama's boy. He finds his voice in music, gospel hymns at the Assembly of God Church. The raw, emotional blues he hears on the other side of the tracks in Tupelo. For his 11th birthday, he wants a rifle or a bicycle. Gladys, terrified he will hurt himself, convinces him to accept a guitar instead. It costs $7.90. It is the most important investment in music history. In 1948, the family packs their belongings into a 1939 Plymouth and moves to Memphis, Tennessee. They are seeking better opportunities. They find only more hardship. They live in public housing projects. Lauderdale Courts. Elvis is an outsider, the quiet kid with the strange clothes and the long sideburns, the boy who sings with a guitar. He is mocked for it. But the guitar is his shield. Music is his escape. He soaks it all in. The blues of Beale Street, the country wail of the Grand Ole Opry on the radio, the gospel quartets he adores. He graduates high school in 1953, the first in his family to do so. He gets a job driving a truck for Crown Electric Company. He is still just a kid, ambitious, but with no clear path. Then, in the summer of 1953, he walks into a small storefront at 706 Union Avenue, Memphis Recording Service. The motto, we record anything, anywhere, anytime. Home of Sun Records, run by a visionary producer named Sam Phillips. Elvis pays $4 to record 2 songs, My Happiness and That's When Your Heartaches Begin. The story he always told was that it was a gift for his mother. The truth is, he wanted to be heard. He wanted to know what he sounded like. The receptionist, Marion Keisker, is intrigued. She makes a note next to his name. Good ballad singer, hold. Sam Phillips is on a quest. He is looking for something new, something explosive. As he famously said, if I could find a white man who had the Negro sound and the Negro feel, I could make $1 billion. A year later, he calls the kid from Crown Electric back. He pairs him with 2 local musicians, guitarist Scotty Moore, bassist Bill Black. The session is going nowhere. They try ballad after ballad. It's lifeless. During a break, Elvis starts fooling around. He grabs his guitar and launches into a sped-up, frantic version of an old blues song, Arthur Big Boy Crudup's That's All Right. He is jumping, singing, full of nervous energy. In the control room, Sam Phillips's head snaps up. What was that? He yells. That was it. That was the sound. The birth of rock and roll, a cultural atom bomb. The next 2 years are a blur, a rocket ride, from local sensation to regional phenomenon to national obsession. The records sell in the millions. Heartbreak Hotel, Don't Be Cruel, Hound Dog. The television appearances are seismic events. Ed Sullivan, Milton Berle, The Sneer, The Swivel of the Hips, Teenagers scream. Parents are horrified. A generation is cleaved in two. The money starts to pour in, more money than the boy from the shotgun shack could ever have imagined. He buys his mother a pink Cadillac, a famous, extravagant gesture of love. He buys a house for his family on Audubon Drive in Memphis, a nice suburban brick home. But it is not enough. Fame has a price: privacy. Fans camp out on the lawn. They peer in the windows. They trample the grass. The quiet suburban street becomes a carnival. Elvis needs a fortress. He needs a place to be himself, a place for his parents, his grandmother, his growing entourage of friends and cousins. He needs a buffer between him and the world that wants to devour him. In the spring of 1957, his parents are driving around the affluent Whitehaven neighborhood. They see a for sale sign on a hill in front of a white-columned mansion. They call their son. He is on tour. He tells them to buy it. On March 19, 1957, 22-year-old Elvis Presley puts a $1,000 cash deposit down on the Moore estate. The final price is $102,500. It is an astronomical sum for the time. It isn't just a home. It is a statement. The poor boy from Tupelo now owns one of the grandest houses in Memphis. He has arrived. He names it Graceland. He keeps the name. Perhaps he likes the sound of it. Perhaps it feels like destiny. But this is not the Moore's Graceland anymore. It will be transformed, remade in his own image. The creation begins immediately. It is a project of love, ambition, and exuberant, untutored taste. Elvis is the visionary. His father, Vernon, whom he has pulled from a life of financial struggle, is the project manager. The first order of business: security, privacy. A fieldstone wall is built around the 13.8-acre property. And then the gates. Elvis sketches the design himself on a napkin, a book of sheet music flanked by two full-size silhouettes of a guitar-wielding rocker. Crafted by a local ironworks, they become the most famous gates in the world. A symbol, a pilgrimage site. Inside, the house becomes a canvas for his whims. The formal, stately rooms of the Moores are gutted. The living room is done in white and royal blue. 15-foot-long white sofas, blue drapes, gold accents. A custom-made stained glass panel is installed depicting peacocks, a symbol of eternal life. The dining room gets black marble floors and opulent red curtains. Upstairs is the private domain. His bedroom, his office, his daughter's room, his dressing room, a world no one else will see. The house is wired for sound. Music is everywhere, but the work is never finished. Graceland is a living entity, constantly changing. In the early 60s, a massive addition is built onto the back of the house. It includes a slot car track, a trophy room, and a kidney-shaped swimming pool. Outside, the grounds are landscaped, fountains are installed, horses graze in the pastures where the Moores' cattle once roamed. Elvis fills the property with life. His parents, Vernon and Gladys, his grandmother, Minnie Mae, known as Dodger, and the Memphis Mafia, his band of friends, cousins, and hangers-on. They are his companions, his bodyguards, his social circle, his court. Graceland becomes their clubhouse. The golden age begins. Life at the estate is a nocturnal affair. Elvis is a night owl. He sleeps all day and comes alive after sunset. The nights are filled with activity. He rents out the entire local movie theater to watch the latest films with his friends. He rents out the entire fairgrounds amusement park to ride the roller coasters without being mobbed. He stages elaborate fireworks battles on the lawn. The house is a playground. He buys golf carts to zip around the property. He holds roller skating parties in the carport. He is the generous king, the lord of the manor. He showers his friends with gifts, cars, jewelry, cash. It is an extension of his fear of poverty, a need to prove he has so much he can just give it away. He is also the master of the house, running it with precision. The kitchen is staffed 24 hours a day. It must be ready to produce his favorite foods at a moment's notice. Fried peanut butter and banana sandwiches, meatloaf, mashed potatoes. The house is a machine designed for his comfort and amusement, but there is a deep sadness at its core. In August 1958, just over a year after they moved into Graceland, his mother Gladys dies. She is only 46. Elvis is devastated. He had been drafted into the army and is stationed in Germany. He flies home for the funeral. He wails in grief, throwing himself over her casket. "Everything I have is gone," he cries. He had bought her the palace, but he could not buy her more time. Graceland, the home he bought for her, becomes her memorial. Her grave is in the backyard. He returns to Germany, a changed man, lost, adrift. It is there he meets Priscilla Beaulieu, the 14-year-old stepdaughter of an Air Force captain. He is 10 years older. He is lonely. She is beautiful, innocent. He sees in her a chance to mold the perfect woman. He courts her, platonically at first. In 1963, he convinces her parents to let her move to Memphis, to finish high school while living at Graceland. She lives there with his father and stepmother, a strange, cloistered existence. She becomes the princess in the tower, the house's living doll. He dictates her clothes, her hair, her makeup. On May 1st, 1967, they are married in Las Vegas, a brief 8-minute ceremony arranged by his manager, Colonel Tom Parker. 9 months later to the day, their daughter, Lisa Marie, is born. Graceland is now a family home. For a time, it is idyllic. The sounds of a baby in the house, Lisa Marie riding her tricycle through the halls. Elvis dotes on his daughter. But the dream is already beginning to fray. His movie career has devolved into a string of forgettable, formulaic musicals. He hates them. He feels like a joke. He is trapped. Trapped by the Colonel's contracts. Trapped by his own fame. Graceland is his only refuge. In 1968, a spark of rebellion. The '68 comeback special. He trades the silly movie costumes for black leather. He stands on a stage and sings with a raw, primal power not seen in a decade. He is brilliant, dangerous, reborn. It is a massive triumph. But it leads him not to a creative renaissance, but to a new, more glittering cage. Las Vegas. The Colonel books him into the International Hotel for a 4-week engagement. It becomes a 7-year sentence. 2 shows a night. Pumping his body full of stimulants to get up for the show and powerful sedatives to come down after. The money is immense, but the cost is higher. He returns to Graceland between Vegas stints, exhausted, bloated. The house becomes a place of recovery and a place of deeper retreat. The decorations grow more eccentric, more theatrical. In the mid-70s, he redecorates the basement. One room becomes the TV room. 3 television sets, side by side, so he can watch all 3 network news broadcasts at once. A wet bar. The ceiling and walls are covered in mirrors. The color scheme is a jarring yellow, white, and black. A lightning bolt emblem with the letters TCB, taking care of business, is painted on the wall. It is his motto, his mantra. The room next to it becomes the billiard room. This is a masterpiece of claustrophobic design. The walls and ceiling are painstakingly pleated with nearly 400 yards of psychedelic, multicolored fabric. It is like being inside a kaleidoscope or a padded cell. But the most famous transformation happens on the ground floor. An open-air patio at the back of the house is enclosed. It becomes the den. Known to the world as the Jungle Room, it is his escape, a fantasy. The furniture is heavy, dark, hand-carved wood with faux fur upholstery. An indoor waterfall built of cut fieldstone trickles down one wall. Green shag carpet covers the floor and the ceiling. Plastic plants and tiki gods complete the Polynesian vibe. It is kitsch. It is over the top. It is also deeply personal. A man building a fantasy island inside his own home because he cannot go out into the world. The house reflects his state of mind, grandiose, isolated, a little bit sad. The turning point comes in 1972. Priscilla, tired of the isolation, the affairs, the suffocating life inside the Graceland bubble, leaves him. The divorce is finalized in 1973. They remain friends, but the loss is a wound that never heals. The heart of the house is gone. Lisa Marie now splits her time between her mother in California and her father at Graceland. When she is there, the house feels alive. When she is gone, it is a vast, empty museum. Elvis's decline accelerates. His health deteriorates. His weight balloons. His dependency on prescription drugs becomes a raging addiction. He is surrounded by the Memphis Mafia, but he is profoundly alone. They are his employees. They cannot say no to him. They cannot stop him. The palace becomes a prison. The walls he built to keep the world out now keep him in. He rarely leaves his upstairs suite. He surrounds himself with books on religion and the occult. He is searching for answers, for meaning, for peace. He is haunted by his mother's death, by the death of his twin, by the loss of Priscilla. He wages a war against his own body, his own boredom. The house becomes a burden. It is a machine that eats money, the staff, the utilities, the endless redecorating, the property taxes. The cost of maintaining his lifestyle and the lifestyle of everyone around him is colossal. The only way to feed the machine is to go back on the road. The final tours are a tragedy. He is a shadow of his former self, bloated, medicated, barely able to get through the shows. He forgets lyrics. He mumbles. The fans still cheer. They see the legend, not the broken man in the rhinestone jumpsuit. But the end is near. In February 1976, in a final burst of creative energy, RCA brings a mobile recording studio to Graceland. They set it up in the jungle room. For a few nights, the house is filled with music again. He sings with a raw, heartbreaking vulnerability. Songs of loss and regret. Hurt. Moody blue. His voice is still magnificent, a force of nature. But the man is fading. These are the last studio recordings he will ever make. The final act begins. He meets Ginger Alden, a 20-year-old Memphis beauty queen. He proposes to her. He gives her a massive diamond ring. She moves into Graceland. Another young woman brought into the strange, gilded cage, but this time there is no magic, only a weary desperation. On the night of August 15, 1977, he goes to the dentist for a late-night appointment. He returns to Graceland in the early morning hours. He plays a little racquetball with his cousin. He sits at the piano in the music room and sings a few gospel songs. Then he goes upstairs with Ginger. He is restless. He cannot sleep. He tells her he is going into his bathroom to read. He takes a book with him, a book about the Shroud of Turin. It is the last time anyone sees him alive. His death is officially ruled a cardiac arrhythmia, a heart attack. But the world knows the truth. It was a heart broken by fame, by grief, by loneliness, a body destroyed by years of prescription drug abuse. The king is dead. His obituary is front-page news around the globe. For 2 days, his body lies in state in the foyer of Graceland. Tens of thousands of mourners file past his open casket. A river of grief flows up the driveway. He is buried next to his mother in a nearby cemetery. But after an attempt to steal his body, Vernon has them both moved to the one place he knew they would be safe, back to Graceland. A meditation garden is built next to the swimming pool. Elvis, Gladys, and later his grandmother, Minnie May, are laid to rest there. Vernon Presley is now the sole heir, the master of an empty palace. He is overwhelmed by grief and by the immense financial pressure. The estate is a monster. The cost to maintain Graceland, just to pay the taxes, the insurance, the utilities, the skeleton staff, is nearly $500,000 a year. The income from Elvis's music royalties has dwindled. The estate is bleeding money. Vernon dies just 2 years later, in 1979. He is buried in the garden beside his son. His will names his granddaughter, Lisa Marie, then just a child, as his heir. But the estate is nearly bankrupt. The inheritance taxes alone are catastrophic. The IRS presents a bill for over $10 million. The executors of the estate consider their options. The only viable choice seems to be selling Graceland. It would be broken up, the land sold to developers. The contents auctioned off to the highest bidder. The house, the symbol of his dream, would be gone forever. This is where the story should end. A palace built on a fleeting fortune, disappearing after its creator's death. A classic tale of American excess. But Graceland has a second act. The savior is the woman who left, Priscilla. As Lisa Marie's legal guardian and an executor of the will, she refuses to let the dream die. She is an astute businesswoman. She explores every option. She takes a trip to California and tours Hearst Castle, the magnificent estate of the newspaper baron William Randolph Hearst. She sees thousands of people paying money to walk through a dead man's house. An idea forms, a radical, desperate gamble. What if they opened Graceland to the public? The other executors are horrified. The family is resistant. It seems like a desecration, turning a home into a tourist trap. But the alternative is losing everything. Priscilla prevails. She hires a chief executive officer, Jack Soden, to help her turn the home into a business. They take out a $500,000 loan to fund the project. They plan with meticulous care. The house itself must be preserved, a time capsule. Nothing will be changed from the way Elvis left it in 1977. The upstairs, his private sanctuary, will remain private, forever, out of respect for his memory and for his daughter. On June 7, 1982, less than 5 years after his death, Graceland opens its gates to paying customers. They have no idea if anyone will come. They hope to break even. The response is overwhelming. In the first month alone, they recoup their entire initial investment. The gamble pays off, spectacularly. Graceland is not just saved, it is reborn. It becomes one of the most successful tourist attractions in the world, second only to the White House as the most visited home in America. The business grows into an empire. A complex of museums, restaurants, and hotels springs up across the street. The estate, which nearly bankrupted his heirs, now generates hundreds of millions of dollars. It secures his family's fortune for generations. The house enters its modern era. In 1991, it is placed on the National Register of Historic Places. In 2006, it is designated a National Historic Landmark. The kitschy palace of a rock and roll star is now a revered piece of American history. The irony is profound. The house built as a private fortress is now one of the most public places on earth. The home he retreated to in isolation is now a gathering place for millions. The place where he died is the reason his legacy lives. Today, the house stands as a monument. On a barrier island of fame, there stands a palace, a white-columned mansion on a Tennessee hill. It endures. The tour is a journey back in time. You walk through the living room with its white sofas and peacock windows. You see the dining room set for a spectral dinner party that will never happen. You pass his mother's bedroom, preserved in shades of lavender and white. You descend into the basement, the mirrored TV room, the fabric-draped pool room, relics of a restless taste. You stand at the velvet rope of the jungle room. You can almost hear the laughter, the music, the trickle of the waterfall. You walk out back, past the swimming pool, to the meditation garden. You stand before the graves, the father, the mother, the grandmother, and the son. A simple bronze plaque marks his final resting place. Elvis Aaron Presley, January 8, 1935, August 16, 1977. Fans leave flowers, teddy bears, handwritten notes. It is a shrine, a place of pilgrimage. The tour ends. You are shuttled back across the street, back to the 21st century. But a question hangs in the humid Memphis air. The house tells a story, but it does not tell the whole story. The most important part of the house remains unseen, the upstairs. It is preserved exactly as he left it. His bedroom, his office, the bathroom where he spent his final moments. It is a private space, held sacred, a final mystery, a place of profound sadness. What is the true legacy of Graceland? Is it a triumph of preservation, a story of a daughter's love and a wife's business acumen, or is it a cautionary tale, a story about the crushing weight of fame, the prison of wealth? The house outlived its builder. As these houses always do, it was his dream, a castle for the king, a home for his mother. It became his playground, his sanctuary, his gilded cage, and in the end, his mausoleum. Who paid for Graceland? The record sales paid for the bricks and mortar. The movie contracts paid for the renovations. The Vegas shows paid for the upkeep. The tourists now pay for its preservation. But the real price was paid by the boy from Tupelo. He dreamed of a safe harbor, a place of grace, and he built a magnificent, beautiful, lonely palace that consumed him. Every mansion has its shadows. Every dream has its price. Imagine, for a moment, the house at night. After the last tour bus has gone, the lights are low, the air is still, the ghosts are all that remain. The ghost of a young boy with a new guitar, the ghost of a mother, proud and worried, the ghost of a rock and roll idol, sneering at a television camera, the ghost of a heartbroken man in a rhinestone jumpsuit, and the ghost of a king, alone in his castle, reading a book in a quiet room, waiting for a dawn that will never come. The house holds them all. It holds their secrets. It holds the echo of the music, and it stands, silent, on its Tennessee hill, a monument to the dream and the cost of the dream, forever. The story of the house is the story of the man, a story of spectacular ascent and tragic decline. The genesis of Graceland, its physical form, was a direct response to the explosive genesis of Elvis's career. He did not buy a plot of land and build from scratch. He bought an existing symbol of the Memphis establishment and remade it. This was crucial. It was an act of appropriation, of claiming a status that was not granted to him by birth. The Moore family's home was a testament to quiet, generational wealth. It was tasteful, conventional, and fit seamlessly into its surroundings. Elvis's Graceland was the opposite. It was loud, personal, and deliberately set apart from its surroundings by a stone wall. The Moores had a home. Elvis built a compound. The architectural changes were not just about adding space. They were about creating zones for his specific needs. The public-facing front of the house retained its dignified colonial appearance. It was the image he presented to the world, a respectful Southern boy. But the back of the house, the additions, the basement, that was the real Elvis, the nocturnal creature who needed a playground insulated from the sun and from public scrutiny. The construction of the trophy room was more than just a place to put awards. It was a physical manifestation of his own insecurity, a constant reminder to himself and to anyone who entered that the boy from the shotgun shack had made it. The sheer volume of gold records, awards, and memorabilia was a bulwark against the fear of returning to poverty. Similarly, the creation of the meditation garden was a profound act. In most cultures, burying the dead on a residential property is unthinkable. But for Elvis, Graceland was more than a residence. It was the anchor of his universe. Bringing his mother's body back to the grounds and later being buried there himself was the ultimate act of possession. It fused the family's story with the property's story forever. It ensured that Graceland would not just be a house, but a dynastic seat, a final home. The excess of the Golden Age was legendary, and it was theatrical. The all-night parties were performances for his inner circle. The spontaneous gift-giving, the Cadillacs, the diamond rings, was a way of asserting his power and generosity. He was the benevolent king of his own small nation. The Memphis Mafia were his court jesters, his knights, and his subjects. This lifestyle required an immense infrastructure. Graceland was run like a small hotel. the kitchen staff, the groundskeepers, the security, the maids. They were all part of the machinery that allowed Elvis to live in his bubble. This machinery was fantastically expensive, and the Colonel, his manager, knew it. The constant need for cash flow kept Elvis on a treadmill of bad movies and grueling Vegas schedules. Graceland was both his refuge from that work and the reason the work was necessary. It was a vicious circle, a beautiful, glittering trap. The decline was mirrored perfectly in the house. As his world shrank, his interior decorating schemes became more elaborate, more bizarre. The Jungle Room is the ultimate example. It's a man-made paradise, a tropical fantasy built in a windowless room in Memphis. It's the room of a man who can go anywhere in the world, but chooses to build a cheap imitation of it at home because it's the only place he feels safe. It is profoundly, heartbreakingly sad. The recordings made in that room are a sonic testament to this period. His voice, aged and worn but still incredibly powerful, echoes against the stone waterfall and the green shag carpet. It's the sound of a man trapped in his own creation, singing his heart out. The tragedy of his death is amplified by its location. He didn't die in a hotel room on the road. He didn't die in a hospital. He died in the most private space of his private fortress. The one area of the house, the upstairs, that was his alone. The fortress walls were useless. The enemy was not an overzealous fan or a prying journalist. It was his own pain, his own addictions. The palace could not protect him from himself. The aftermath is perhaps the most fascinating part of Graceland's story. Most homes of the famous are either sold off, altered beyond recognition, or turned into sterile museums. Graceland avoided that fate. Priscilla's decision was revolutionary. It wasn't just about opening a museum, it was about preserving a home. The decision to keep the upstairs private was a stroke of genius. It maintained a sense of dignity and mystery. It allowed the public to visit without feeling like they were completely violating his memory. That single velvet rope at the top of the stairs is the most powerful object in the house. It represents the boundary between the public icon and the private man. It tells visitors, you can see his life, but you cannot know his soul. The modern Graceland is a complex entity. It is a business, a highly profitable one. It is a historical landmark. It is a shrine. For the fans who make the pilgrimage, it is a sacred place. They are not just tourists. They are devotees paying their respects. They weep at his grave. They leave offerings. They want to connect with his spirit, which they feel still resides in the house. And, in a way, it does. The house is so thoroughly imbued with his personality that it feels alive. The garish decor, the custom furniture, the sheer, unapologetic Elvisness of it all. It's a perfect snapshot of one man's taste, ambitions, and fears at a specific moment in time. It's authentic in a way that most curated museums are not. The thematic conclusion must reflect this duality. Graceland is a symbol of the American dream achieved, the poor boy who becomes a king and builds his castle. But it is also a symbol of the dark side of that dream, the loneliness of fame, the burden of wealth, the illusion that material possessions can provide peace or happiness. Elvis wanted a home. He built a palace, and the palace demanded a king, and being a king, he discovered, was a lonely, exhausting job. The house he created to serve his needs ended up dictating them. It demanded to be filled with people, with activity, with drama. It demanded to be paid for. It was a hungry ghost. The final image of the empty house at night is the key. When the crowds are gone, what is left? The echo of a life lived at full volume, the silence that follows. The house stands as the final witness. It saw the joy, it saw the parties, it saw the love, and it saw the quiet, desperate sorrow of the man who walked its halls alone at night. It keeps his secrets. The music is gone, but the building remains, a strange and beautiful testament to a life that was larger than life, and to a death that was all too human. The narrative must balance the awe and the pathos. We should be impressed by the scale of his success and the grandeur of his home, but we must also be moved by the immense personal cost. The story of Graceland is not just the story of a famous singer's house. It's a Greek tragedy, played out in shag carpet and gold lame. It's about a man who flew too close to the sun and built a beautiful, strange, and ultimately lonely monument to his fall. The details of the house are the details of his soul, the peacocks in the stained glass, a desire for immortality, the 3 TVS, a need to absorb the world from a safe distance. The billiard room's fabric walls, a retreat into a womb-like fantasy, the jungle room, a final desperate attempt to build a paradise he could no longer find in the real world. Every design choice tells a story. Every room is a chapter in his psychological biography. The survival of Graceland is, in itself, a miracle. It defied the odds. It survived the death of its owner, the threat of bankruptcy, and the changing tastes of time. It has become more famous in death than it ever was in life. It has become synonymous with his name. You cannot think of Elvis without thinking of Graceland, and you cannot think of Graceland without thinking of Elvis. The man and the mansion are one. That is the ultimate legacy. He poured his life, his fortune, and his very identity into those walls. And in return, the house has kept his memory alive, perfectly preserved for the entire world to see. A flawed, beautiful, tragic, and triumphant American story. The house is a character in its own right, a silent protagonist that witnessed everything. It was a passive recipient of his dreams, then an active participant in his decline by virtue of its financial demands, and finally the sole guardian of his legacy. It absorbed his joy and his pain. It was the stage for his life and the setting for his death. And now it tells his story to anyone who will listen. The narrative must convey this sense of the house as a living, breathing entity. It's not just a collection of rooms and objects. It is the physical embodiment of a soul. The staccato paragraph style will help create a sense of moving through the house, room by room, memory by memory. Short declarative sentences will land with the impact of historical facts. Rhetorical questions will guide the audience's reflection. The story builds from the land to the man to the house to the legend and finally to the quiet, melancholy truth. It's a journey from a dirt-poor childhood to a kingdom of his own making, and the story of how that kingdom became both his monument and his tomb. That is the dark, compelling heart of the story of Graceland. The financial aspect is a critical antagonist. The numbers tell a story of their own. The initial purchase price, a fortune in 1957, the $500,000 annual running costs in the late 1970s, the $10 million tax bill that threatened to destroy it all, and the hundreds of millions it generates today. This financial arc mirrors the dramatic arc, from a symbol of unimaginable wealth to a ruinous burden to a source of perpetual fortune. Money is the engine of the story, the force that both builds the dream and threatens to tear it down. The family dynamic adds another layer of tragedy. The profound love for his mother, whose early death cast a long shadow. The complicated, often strained relationship with his father, who was both his employee and his parent. The fairy tale romance with Priscilla that soured into a painful divorce. The adoration for his daughter, Lisa Marie, who represented a link to a normal life he could never fully have. Graceland was the stage for all of these domestic dramas. It was a family home that could never be just a family home. In the end, the story of Graceland is a story about the American obsession with fame and fortune and the reality that often lies behind the glittering facade. Elvis Presley was the ultimate American icon, and Graceland is his ultimate American house, beautiful and bold, excessive and contradictory, a place of dreams and a place of sorrow. It is the king's castle, and it stands as a permanent reminder that even kings can be prisoners in their own homes. The final word belongs to the house itself, standing silent, holding the truth in its quiet, unseen rooms. The legacy is therefore not simple. It's not just a rags to riches story. It's a rags to riches and ruin and redemption story, with the house as the central element. The house was the prize, the burden, and finally, the savior. It is a complex, multi-layered narrative that resonates because it touches on universal themes: family, ambition, loss, and the search for a place to call home. Elvis searched for it his whole life, and in Graceland he built it and was consumed by it. A palace of his own making, a beautiful trap from which his spirit never escaped. And now the world pays to visit his cage, to marvel at its beauty, and to feel, for a moment, the ghost of the king. This complex legacy is what makes the story endure. It's not just about the music or the movies, it's about the life lived within those walls. A life of incredible highs and devastating lows. A life that proves that you can have everything the world has to offer, the money, the fame, the adoration, and still die alone in the heart of your own kingdom. That is the dark story, the secret they never told you, about America's most famous mansion. It is a monument not just to a star, but to the complicated, often tragic, nature of the American dream itself. It is a story written in stone and shag carpet. The final moments of the narrative should leave the audience with a sense of melancholic awe. The image of the upstairs, forever preserved, forever unseen, is the perfect symbol for the parts of Elvis's life that the public could never access. The pain, the fear, the loneliness. Graceland's public face is the triumphant story of a cultural icon. Its private heart holds the tragic story of a man. The narrative must honor both.